Good morning, and thank you all for attending this webinar on the 5 reasons for outsourcing sales team recruitment. We have with us today Karen Benjamin, my business partner, with over 20 years experience in recruiting, sales leadership, and sales management, specifically in a business-to-business and technology environment. Karen is considered a national expert, has been doing this for 20 years, and one point that I feel that makes her an absolute authority on this topic is that she's worked many years as a VP of sales, sales manager, and a salesperson prior to becoming a recruiter. So when she talks with candidates and resources, she's able to talk with them as a former manager. So why don't we get into it? Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Joe, for being on the call with me.
Sure. And as we progress through this call, if you have questions, you can go to the chat and someone will answer them live. However, we would like to take some questions at the end. We're going to go about 20 minutes through the topic and leave 10 minutes in the end for live questions. So if you'd like your question answered via chat, just raise your hand in chat, and we'll have someone answering that. If you'd like to spool up your questions, and we'll answer those in the end. We're going to go, as I said, about 20 minutes live and then 10 minutes for Q&A. So Karen, let's get right into it. Reason number 1, there's a national shortage for B2B sales talent. That would surprise most people.
Right. It surprises people a lot of the times because, people do talk about applicants to positions or unemployment rates. But I think that the key things, that you need to understand is the shortage of B2B sales talent comes from a couple different reasons why. The first one is there's 900,000 unfilled business-to-business sales jobs available today in the United States. Now, of all the salespeople who are out there selling today, about 1.8 million of those salespeople are in jobs that would also be categorized as specifically business-to-business sales. Now, here's the part that creates the shortage. The shortage of talent comes from the fact that only the top 26% of salespeople out there selling B2B are bringing incremental revenue to their companies. So if you take, the 900,000 unfilled jobs, 1.8 million salespeople doing it, only 26% of them are doing it effectively. The top 6% of these business-to-business salespeople, they're able to function completely, meet their sales objectives, exceed their quotas with little or no supervision, but that number is only 6%. There's another 20% of people in business-to-business technology roles that have, around 60% of the skills that are proven by research to separate those into those top quartile sales performers. And unfortunately, a lot of us are hiring the bottom 74%, and those are the people where you see the typical turnover statistics that unfortunately far too many of us are familiar with. People leaving within 12 to 24 months, people who aren't meeting their quotas, people you have to let go, and that's why there's a shortage of B2B sales talent that adds incremental revenue to your companies.
Wow. So let's see if I understand this correctly. There's 1.8 million B2B salespeople in the country today.
There's people who hold that title, correct.
Right. And in addition, there's 900,000 unfilled positions, B2B sales.
Right. So all those people, those are the people that are employed. That statistic is 1.8 million are employed, and there's still 900,000 more jobs that would require those kind of people.
And of the 1.8 million that are employed, what you're saying is 74% of them
are underperforming. Meaning they're not bringing incremental revenue to your organization, so you would have had the revenue that they brought in with or without that particular person.
And why are they underperforming? What constitutes or what makes them underperform, or how do you title them underperforming?
So it means they're not meeting their quota, they're not adding incremental revenue, and they're not entering new markets, and it's because they lack things like the will to sell, the commitment to do whatever it takes to win a deal behaviorally, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. They're not motivated towards selling specifically. They don't have the right mindset or strengths. So things like they recover from rejection fast. They don't have a high need for approval, so they can challenge a customer to do what's best for them. They don't have any money weaknesses, so they talk about money early, often, and with ease, the ones that are successful. And then there's the skills. Do they hunt and prospect using modern day prospecting messages? And do they have the right skills to qualify, consultatively sell, close sales, build relationships, use CRM, have a structured sales process? There's a lot of people who don't have the right combination of those things to do it consistently all the time.
Got it. So reason number one, there's a nationwide shortage of B2B sales talent. Let's go on to number two, focus on your core business. What do you mean by that?
Right. So hiring top sales talent, so we've already figured out that there's not a lot of them. And so it really is hard to find them. So that means it's time consuming, it's costly, and you may or may not have the skill set in your organization. So you focus on the core things you do. So if you're in contract manufacturing, you want to be making your product. If you're in IT services, you want to be out with your customers. So 80 to 90% of your core business is spending the time with your customers delivering what you're effective at. By outsourcing the hiring process that's time consuming, skill specific, and cost intensive, you're able to spend that time while still continuously and immediately upgrading the talent on your sales team.
Sure. So you're saying is focus on your customers, not your unfilled or underperforming sales positions.
Absolutely. Someone who has their full-time and you are their customer that they're 100% focused on can help you do that.
And your customer's core business, if it's a CEO, he or she needs to focus on leading the organization. If you're a VP of sales, you have to focus in on driving quota, sales process, sales training, sales methodology, closing sales, pipeline management, not focusing in on interviewing and hiring. Outsource that piece of it.
Interview hiring and the most time-consuming part is actually to find and attract those top 26% performers. And so don't spend your time there. Allow experts to do that for you.
What does headhunting mean? Where does headhunting come into this?
So headhunting means that you have to, most of these top quartile sales performers aren't actively looking for employment. They're successfully employed. They're doing what we just advised you to do. They're out there focused on their customers. So headhunting is when an outsourced provider for you goes out and finds them for you. So they look into your competition. They look into adjacent industries. The profile of the person selling something similar to your same customers who is high performing. You have to find them, and then you have to have good reasons that they would want to leave where they are and come work for you. And that in and of itself is the most time consuming part of the hiring process, is A, finding them, B, engaging them to be interested in you, and having a match in their motivators and yours so that they'll come work for you.
So you mean going to a job board like monster.com, right?
No. So that would be probably the last place.
You can't headhunt on monster.com?
You can't headhunt on monster.com by function.
Career builder.
Their core competency is to acquire applicants, and many of those are going to be those 74% of people who are churning their job and employment status every 12 to 24 months and have an incrementally generated revenue for their company. The people focused on their customers who aren't thinking about that are the people we headhunt.
So how many times do you see the top quartile, the top 6% or the top 26% putting their resume on a job board?
Less than 10% of the time.
Great. Okay. Are we ready to go to number 3?
We are ready.
Okay. Reason number 3, gain competitive advantage by hiring the competitor's best sales team. And I see all these superstars. What does that mean?
So
are you in here?
No, I'm not. So the picture of the superheroes or the superstars that we want to hire was meant to depict those top sales performers. And we want to look at people who understand your customers, your decision-making network, and sell either the same or similar products or services so that they understand your process, the durations of your sales cycle, who the decision makers are. So really looking at competitive or adjacent industries is usually where we can reduce the learning curve, cost of hire, cost of training when people are coming on board into a new position. So headhunting people right out of your competition, or take that person who beat you and put them on your team. That's a great way to get someone who's going to perform for you as well.
Is that ethical? Is there an ethics problem with that?
Well, one of the reasons, again, to outsource it is because, I think people think about that differently, and I think there's industries where it affects, but yes, it's hard for, someone to call their direct competitor and steal their people and then see them at the, industry trade show next week or partnering on an RFP. So an outsourced sales recruiter can actually do that for you because they found them, they attracted them, and it's their job to do that, and it takes you out of that ethical dilemma.
Why would a good salesperson, a successful salesperson, that top 25 salesperson, leave the company that they're at and go to the company that you're recruiting for? What makes people leave? Why would they go from one company to another, or sometimes go from a company that's performing very well to an underperforming company? Tell me about that, please.
Right. So the top two reasons or categories of reasons that cause salespeople to change positions is usually one of two things. Either they would want growth from where they are today from a career perspective, and that can mean different things to different people, and that's part of what the interview process would determine. But, is it a bigger territory? Is it more services to offer? Is it, a greater sense of responsibility, or even moving from, an individual contributor role to management? Could be, but there's lots of forms of growth. The other is there's instability in the situation they have today. So when we're reaching out to people, we're looking for what their motivators would be around the growth and stability topics. And a lot of inside of that is they don't like working for their direct boss because they don't provide those things for them. So they don't like the person that they're working for. So one of the first questions you can ask a person is, what could be better or different about your situation? Because again, remember, they're not looking, they didn't apply to their job. They may say things are going great, killing my quota and making it happen. But okay, what could be better or different? Or what's next for you? Or what would make your day even more exciting? And you start to crack that door to find out if you have something to offer that person based on their growth or stability motivators.
So as a recruiter, as a manager of an outsourced recruiting team, what percentage of this is negotiations? What percentage of this is selling the job to the candidate? What percentage of this is really talking to a successful salesperson about making a career change? How important is that? How difficult is that? How does that done differently than just processing a resume?
Well, we do it just like you would want your top salespeople to do it. I mean, essentially, we are out prospecting for prospective candidates. So, and then we are engaging them to have interest with a compelling value statement about why they might want to come work for you. And then once we've got them on the phone, absolutely, you're going through a discovery phase. You're going through a fit assessment. You're figuring out if their motivators match yours, and you're convincing them to make one of the biggest changes a person can make, a career change. So it's extremely important, and the headhunting proactive recruiters have all of the sales skills that we're looking for in our sales talent to be able to do that effectively.
Do you recruit just salespeople, or do you recruit, what do you recruit for?
So we look at it as all of the positions that generate revenue for an organization. So that's marketing at all levels. So everything, from your highest ranking marketing leader to inbound lead generation marketing people. And then it's all types of sales. So inbound sales, inside sales, your traditional full life cycle outside salesperson, all levels of sales leadership. So everything from a sales manager up to an EVP of sales, and then solution architects, sales engineers, any sort of technical sales support people who are involved in the sales process, as well as customer service. But today's organizations, you really have to think about, everybody sells. But so it's a much more, broad scope of the people who bring revenue into your company, and hiring right for all of those roles.
So it's really working with your client to build the entire client-facing team, everyone that's involved with revenue generation.
Correct.
Sure. Great. Is there anything more that you'd like to tell us on number 3 before we go into reason number 4?
No, I think we're ready for reason number 4.
Okay. So reason number 4, high turnover rates. And I see this sign that says I quit. What does this mean? What are you trying to tell us?
Right. So funny enough, I was just having this conversation earlier this morning. and it's true, the average tenure of people in sales roles or sales leadership roles today is something between 18 and 24 months. So that's, those statistics are supported in many, many studies, and unfortunately we've probably all experienced it. Now sometimes they quit and sometimes we let them go, but it's usually for the same reasons. It's because they're not on quota. They're not adding incremental revenue to your organization. And when you start thinking about turnover over 18 to 24 months, the amount of, lost revenue, cost of hiring, and how much goes on, and you can't even gauge a person's effectiveness in that amount of time with what many sales cycles are today when you're in a complex B2B environment. So less than 33% of salespeople out there are on their quota, and they're leaving the companies they're with, whether by choice, their choice or yours, within 18 and 24 months because they're not performing.
33% of people, less than 33% are on their quota today?
That's correct. Less than 33% of all salespeople are on their quota today.
The quota's too high?
No, the quotas aren't too high. In fact, many times they're too low. And I think, people keep adjusting quotas based on performance, and quotas should be adjusted based on the kind of growth your company needs to see.
Sure. So when you look at, there's a nationwide shortage of salespeople, there's high turnover, there's performance issues here. What's causing this? Why is this? Is this something new? What's causing this shortage? What's causing the high turnover? Has it always been there, or is it something that's new in 2016, 2017?
So it's not completely new, but it's more pronounced than ever. So if we think about the technology that's available to us today and what a good salesperson really has to do to be effective with their customers, is all of us, if you're all here, I would ask you live, but when we want to buy something or we want to research something, we all go to Google. We all start looking for information. So salespeople today have, bigger blocks than they ever have had before. And effective salespeople today have to be able to bring something to their potential customers that they would not have had without that person. And that's more challenging to do than ever. So what's required of a salesperson continues to change as technology changes, and the kind of skill set they have to have goes up. And there's not good training, education, college programs, or companies dedicating time to this. And it's a funny thing, but think about it. How much time goes into training your engineers, your operational people, your quality people, versus what degrees, what college programs, what kind of training programs, I would challenge yourself to ask, do you have for your salespeople? Or you just expect them, they're paid money, they're paid commission, go sell. And
Sure.
It doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah, and it seems to me that there's a wide range of what the expectation of a salesperson. What makes a good salesperson versus someone that's not good? Just what are the 2 or 3 things that a great salesperson does that's different than one that can't sell or that doesn't sell well?
So I think from a skills perspective, it's important that they can go into the market with a compelling message that they can say quickly to their customers that sets a benchmark of what that company should expect from their performance. So it's them thinking about their customer's customer and what they can do to increase their market share and setting a benchmark to be able to do that. Most salespeople don't know those benchmarks, can't set those benchmarks, have trouble speaking to them. Mm-hmm. The second is really being able to understand right fit. Many salespeople fail because they think external factors are the reason they're ineffective at selling. They lack responsibility in the selling process. And it's because they think about what's wrong, the economy, the market, the product, the engineer, the boss. But what's really wrong is they aren't discovering what the need is and working with customers where they are the best fit. And the worst one is that only 21% of all salespeople, based on the research, close effectively. They don't ask for the deal from the right person at the right time, all the time. They don't take that step and ask for that deal. So those are the 3 things that the 74% of salespeople who don't add revenue don't do.
Are they getting to the right decision makers?
No. So the right thing at the right time with the right people is the important part, and not getting to the right decision makers or proposing the solution at the wrong time, prematurely, too late, not getting to the right decision makers with the right message at the right time.
Sure. So in 30 seconds or a minute before we go to the next topic, what is your advice for a sales leader to quickly evaluate whether their salesperson is effective or not, other than just are they bringing in the quota? What are the 2 or 3 things that you are looking for?
You have to ask them the question of how they obtain new accounts, and you're looking for them to be able to set a benchmark. You have to ask them how they take a person through the sales process to see if they ask fit assessment questions and can solution to an answer, and ask them what they do to close business. Get examples, get multiple examples, get many examples of those things. And then there's predictive analytic tools out there that are better than our human judgment. And we use one that's been 96% predictive, but it will also get to the core of those particular skill sets.
Okay. Anything more that you'd like to say on turnover before we go to the last reason number 5, reducing costs?
No, I think let's get to cost reduction. I'm sure everybody wants to do that.
Sure. So reason number 5, reduce costs. And if you can just walk us through what you mean by that.
Right. So the cost, I think, there's a lot of ways to look at cost around this, and I think you really want to make sure you're considering the total cost when you're looking at your sales team or your sales revenue. So one of the things that's easy to look at is what's the cost to hire itself. So, what kind of tools, what kind of products, are you using, and what does that look like? There's the easy stuff, again, that's their compensation, their pay, their loaded benefits, and those are the things we usually think about. But what people miss, and it's the most important and it's the most compelling reason that you can't leave underperformers on your team, is it's the lost revenue from the unfilled positions. That's the most important thing. So for every month that goes by that quota isn't being filled, you're not only spending all those dollars we just talked about, but you're not obtaining those dollars and those profits. So if you have, a $3 million quota, divide that by 12 months. For every month that quota is underperformed, it's costing you that. Not to mention your just reputation and customers that you'll never be able to work with again. So it's the lost revenue from unfilled positions that's the most important reason beyond the other obvious reasons.
So you have a 0% chance of achieving revenue if you've got an unfilled position.
Of course.
Right. Single biggest loss, right? Mm-hmm. You're losing the potential revenue with an unfilled position. And then you're talking about the compensation and expenses paid to underperforming. What does that look like? Base salary, what is that? What's that loss?
Right. So, that's certainly going to vary depending on the level of the person in the market. But, easily, even for a mid-level B2B outside salesperson, you're talking about a, minimal cash outlay of, base salaries in, say, the 60 to 80K range. There's the cost of all their benefits and healthcare, which we know are going up tremendously. There's commissions for stuff that just comes in the house. And there's all the time they take. So, easily per salesperson, you're talking about $100,000 to $175,000 a year on average.
Sure. So we're going a little bit over.
Hard costs.
We're going a little bit over. Why don't we wrap this up and let's open this up to questions. So will that be live or will that be reading through these? Okay. So our first question is from Keith Nikoloff. Okay. And would be interested in some specific success stories in hiring top talent from a competitor. So some ideas of where you've seen this happen or made this happen of hiring the competitor's salespeople.
Sure. So I guess if I think about it, so I'll give you one from this morning that came up. So I think how you think about a competitor is important. So if you're in the IT services industry or if you're in the contract manufacturing industry, what does that look like? So I'll give you a real one that was maybe a little more complex. So what this particular company does is they're in the electronics recycling industry. And they have 3 different market segments. So they have a B2B technology sales where they're refurbishing and reselling equipment. So kind of an IT, hardware, electronics type of product sale. They also have an inside group that acts more like buyers within an organization to bring the product in. And then they have an e-commerce group that sells online. So we really talked about, what is the competitive industry. And so we looked at, IT, electronics, telecommunications, product equipment, reverse logistics, transportation and supply chain, and then said we're going to, look at these particular companies who employ these people. But the most important thing is they have a similar selling model and they sell to the same customer. So what are those transferable products and services? And then you look at those companies, you look at those people, and identify the ones who perform to headhunt out the way we talked about earlier. But 100% of our searches, that's the model that we're following. So, when we look at the IT services industry, we look at, is it hardware, software, products, services, and what is that correct mix of those things, for example?
Typically, when you're in a conversation with a top salesperson for a competitor, what are some of the reasons that salesperson is thinking about leaving? What are some of the areas that they respond best to?
Right. So usually, a lot of times, it's how territories are aligned. So it goes back to the conversation we had about growth or stability. So why would they change? So it could be a territory growth opportunity. It could be how the products or services can be applied to different or new markets. So market restrictions. So in some companies, you can only go after the government space, or you can only go after Mil-Aero, or you can only go after higher ed. But in other companies, you can do any or all. Some people prefer to be niched. Some people prefer to be broad. Either way, that's considered an opportunity to improve their skill sets or make more money, for example. So you have to get to those kind of growth and stability motivators of why they would leave.
Is some of it just money, to make more money?
It is.
Opportunity to make more money?
I mean, it can be. So that's one form of growth. One thing people do confuse, though, is, and when we use the predictive analytic assessment, salespeople can be intrinsically and or extrinsically motivated, and there's not a statistical correlation that one works better than other. It's 1% more extrinsic. Money's always in the top 5 for salespeople, but it varies in what order. So money is a form of growth, and it absolutely can be more money, but it's not always or only more money.
Is it ever just because they don't feel appreciated by their current boss or their current manager?
Often. That's one of the top 2 reasons people leave, is because they just don't feel recognized or appreciated. A lot of companies, and probably you'll sigh or laugh when you hear this, people just don't like their salespeople. They don't like how they act. They don't like that they're rude. They don't like that they're pushy. They don't like that they golf, and they have all these misconceptions of what a salesperson does. And they're probably some of the least liked people, especially in technology companies. And they just want the love. So there's a lot of times where if they just don't feel appreciated by their boss, or they just don't feel embraced by their culture, those are reasons to move. And they consider that growth, and they consider that more stability. If I can work for a company that's a sales-driven organization.
Good. And another one is from Jerry, and he asked, what is the difference between outsourced sales recruiting and typical retained recruiting or contingent recruiting? What is that difference?
Right. So outsourced sales recruiting really is an outsourced function. So just like when you think about you outsource your IT services or you outsource your engineering services, outsourced recruiting takes on the whole function for you. So typically the way that the service is provided is far more flexible because you can do any or all pieces of the process. So, and you learn along with that process when you're outsourcing the process. So how do you find, how do you attract, how you engage, each step of the interview, and predictive analytic assessments are used, and any or all of those things can be purchased in more of an hourly or service level or performance-based model, as opposed to a fee per hire that's very restrictive in terms of the number of people that you can fill. So the model allows you to continuously have access to a full pipeline of top sales talent in a much more affordable, quicker way, and hire as many of those people as you would like to at any time. So you're continuously filling your unfilled or upgrading your underperforming.
So they're exactly the same, except outsourced sales recruiting is faster, higher quality, lower cost, and just better.
Exactly. Other than that, they're the same.
We're about out of time. To learn more, call Karen Benjamin. You can reach her on 399-0651 or email. We will be putting this website or this webinar online, make it available to all folks. And I want to thank everyone for listening. We do have some additional questions. We will forward answers to you. And but thank you all. And remember, nothing happens until something is sold. Take care.